Mining analyst Mr. Peter Major joins us now via video link to also weigh in on the current developments in Stilfontein Mine. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. A very good afternoon. So the news on the tip of all our tongue at this moment is the situation that is currently unfolding, has been unfolding in Stilfontein. But mine and yours is to go back to this age-old issue, Peter, of abandoned or disused mines, because there was a time a while back that government was really taken to task about actually relooking some of the policies that govern the mining sector, especially on the responsibility of shutting down a mine after prospecting. Whatever happened to those conversations, Peter? Do you remember them?
I'm afraid it's called kick the can down the road. Excuse me. We hear this far too often. Every time there's a difficult issue, they want to study it, which makes sense. If you don't know what's going on, you do want to study it. But this is not a new issue.
No.
And I would have thought they studied this for years, if not decades, before they brought this new policy in called the MPRDA in 2004. And when you radically change something, you better be prepared for it, because our previous policy had been refined over 120 years and had been refined with all parties taking part: the unions, the government, the shareholders, the mining companies, and naturally the workers. Now we got a new policy here, and this is happening in the largest gold producing area the world ever saw. We had hundreds of shafts, and they're big, deep shafts, and they were built with billions of dollars. They're not easy to get down without automated equipment. How these guys are getting down there, and most of these shafts were closed by the mining companies, but they've been reopened using heavy equipment, using dynamite, using very determined people. And so government has a lot to answer for. You know, who was monitoring these mines after they were closed down? Who has responsibility for it? Who's holding the licenses for it? Who's holding the rehabilitation money? Government's supposed to be holding all the rehabilitation money for these mines.
Absolutely, Peter. And I suppose it goes back to this issue once again. Who's benefiting? Who is supplying? Because once we catch those people, only then are we going to understand how those people actually get such sophisticated technology to actually go down those mine shafts. We've been seeing harrowing visuals of how these miners are actually going underground and abstracting some of these minerals. And some are even saying that they are making a killing, Peter, of up to 50,000 rands a month. Now, the safety aspects that communities in and around illegal mining towns have long been flagged by residents, Peter. Allegations from rape to murders. I'm sure you've seen the stories that have since surfaced. So what is the real damage then to society that is brought directly by illegal mining operations to any town?
It is huge, gigantic damage to society because, as you pointed out, Alicia, who's funding these people?
Yes.
Where is the gold going? This gold is not going through a mining company to the Rand refinery as it used to. This gold is going to illegal refiners. It's going to illegal syndicates. They're taking the money out of the country, probably at massive discounts, 50% discount, 25% discount, doesn't matter. It's going out of the country at massive discounts. It's destroying the countryside, destroying the social fabric around these villages, these communities. It's making these mines much more dangerous to anybody else. It's damaging the water supply, groundwater. Yeah, it's huge cost in many, many ways. And it's taken a lot of local residents in a dangerous path trying to stay alive. Forget the fact that these mines don't pay tax. This gold is not paying tax. Whereas our traditional companies, they were often paying 45% tax. They were contributing to payroll tax, VAT. It's huge damage. A lot of it can't be readily seen, but if you analyze it, it's damaging all kinds of components of our country, our government, our society, and the men that live here and work.
Absolutely, Peter. And it's not only the residents that are surrounding those towns. I think I heard an official admitting for the first time since the saga actually began that there were some 2 people that were killed in an underground gas explosion recently. And this was actually as a direct result of such illegal mining activities, Peter. So the repercussions are really dire. The authorities are aware. We've heard about sinkholes as well as threats of houses that are caving in some of these towns that are surrounding some of these disused mines.
It's hard to say, who do we feel the most sorry for? The workers that have joined these syndicates just so they can earn money for their family. I've got a lot of sympathy for them. I've got a lot of sympathy for police, the good police, who have to try and enforce policies that shouldn't happen. And we remember the stress a lot of policemen were under during the apartheid era, enforcing rules that the rest of the world would never call a rule, that were an abolition, not a, I forget the word, an abomination. You know, rules and laws that are an abomination, and your job is to try and enforce them. Now, we hear stories and we've seen examples. There's corrupt policemen that are benefiting from this, that are helping this happen. But the poor, honest policeman who's now sent by a minister who helped approve the laws, the policies, and the regulations that brought our industry to this state. There's a lot of people that feel sorry for it, but there's a lot of people that should be called to account.
And Peter, I mean, there has been various calls to legalize the small-scale mining industry or artisanal miners. So what are your thoughts on that? And while we're on this point, I know it's been flagged quite a lot during the past week as we've seen the developments in Stilfontein, even by some of the community members, Peter, but this in no way means that their frustrations over licenses should actually lead them to criminality.
You're right, Alicia. And we've got to ask, why do we now need to make illegal miners legal? Why aren't the large mining companies doing this? The large companies were working decades ago when the gold price was much less than half what it is today. They were making good profits. They were hiring all the time. They were sinking new shafts all the time. Why did we change those policies and legislations that gave us this? So how are you going to make an illegal miner into a legal miner? The reason syndicates are here is because the profit margins are so high. Why are the margins high? Because they don't have to deal with the unions. They don't have to deal with the DMR. They don't have to deal with any of the government legislation, rules, regulations. They don't have to worry about the environment. That's why the syndicates are here, because the profit margins are so high, because they're not going to follow any of those rules. If they want to follow all those rules, then they'll constitute themselves as a legitimate company. And
Absolutely.
Legitimate companies don't want to come here because they're forced to uphold all this myriad, this plethora of insane rules, and there's thousands of them.
Absolutely, Peter. And as we understand, the bulk of those that are operating there illegally are actually not even legal themselves. Their legal status in the country is also quite a huge question. Thank you so much for your contribution, as always, this afternoon, Mr. Peter Major, there, a mining expert on the current situation in Stilfontein.